Hello, friends. Today I wanted to talk about a magazine for children. And this magazine, to be exact, is the Kid's Guide to the Free Market. I am going to be posting some pictures of the magazine, the pages of it, since I assume many of you don't have an 11-year-old brother who's subscribed to children's propaganda. Just so you can kind of see what I'm referring to. I just want to be clear about it, and I just want you to be able to see it so you can, tell me if I'm way off on what I'm saying here. But want to make sure you can tell and make sure that I'm representing the arguments correctly here. I do want to state up front here that this video is not an argument for socialism or any other economic system really, but more of a critique of capitalism and more specifically this magazine. As silly as you may think I am for dunking on a children's magazine, I think it is important to point out flaws and to just address something like this. And though I have my own political leanings and economic leanings, of course, I don't want this video to be purely about this is why socialism is better, this is why blah blah blah. I wanted this to be just a critique of this specific magazine. Opening to the first page after the table of contents, we see a little excerpt on Adam Smith. Adam Smith is considered the father of capitalism and the father of economics in general. He did a lot to pioneer a lot of modern economic systems we have today. I don't argue with that at all. And I really don't have any problem with someone teaching the history of Adam Smith and his book, The Wealth of Nations. I think it's important to study that. He had a lot of ideas, and, ideas are meant to be discussed. But I do have a little bit of a problem with how they word it with the Founding Fathers. Smith's book was very influential to the Founding Fathers. Smith was a personal friend of Benjamin Franklin, and Thomas Jefferson called The Wealth of Nations the best book to read about economics. And though both those statements are true, there were more Founding Fathers than just Benjamin Franklin and Thomas Jefferson. And yes, the book may have had a little bit of a bearing and may have had some influence on our modern economic system, but to give a more balanced representation, if you're presenting the history, you also have to bring up some of the disagreements with it. It may be a little bit nitpicky, but the magazine paints the portrait as if all the Founding Fathers loved Adam Smith's ideas, but it is believed that Alexander Hamilton criticized some of the ideas presented by Adam Smith, who also, of course, played a very influential role in modern economic structure, especially in the United States. That isn't to say that some of the Founding Fathers didn't agree with Smith, but to conclude that there was no disagreements comes across as a little shady, or just to not present it. There's nothing wrong with people sharing their ideas, but to portray it as the ideas were held unanimously, I think is misleading, and I would have preferred to see a little bit of better history there and some representation against the idea as well. Flipping the page over, we come to our next section, which gives us a look at the amazing innovations that we have made due to capitalism. Upon seeing this chart, you may think to yourself, well, I like my iPhone, I like my car, and I like to travel in airplanes, so I guess capitalism must be amazing. Look at all these great things that have happened. And I really do hate to burst your dollar sign filled bubble, but some of this just isn't accurate. The man who invented the supercritical wing was named Richard T. Whitcomb. He revolutionized modern air travel, and to quote Robert Gregg of Boeing Commercial Airplanes, NASA's work on managing the sound barrier providing the fundamental understanding of transonic and supersonic aerodynamics, which allowed the development of the aircraft we fly around in today. Excuse me. That was funded by NASA, which is a government organization, publicly funded. And then jumping down to the smartphone example, there's actually a fantastic video by the channel Current Affairs that looks into the history of the smartphone, and I will link down in the description. To kind of sum it up, everything from Wi-Fi to Google to the technology that makes up your phone was all funded and created by government agencies. Businesses don't innovate, they just buy patents for the technology the government has already, funded the creation of. And I would recommend looking into that video and watching it. It's very interesting, well thought out points there. And they have all the sources there, of course. It would be unfair of me not to mention the last category, which is automobiles, and I do have to admit that they got me on this one. Carl Benz of Mercedes-Benz did create the modern gas engine, and his wife Bertha Ringer, interestingly enough, used her dowry to fund a gas motor factory. So I guess the kid's guide got me there, and 1 out of 3 isn't that bad, right? I still think it's kind of bad. I mean, 2 of the 3 examples you give were not innovated by capitalism. They were developed by the government. So I don't know what you're trying to prove there. Moving forward here. On the same page, we get a little section on the evils of government regulation. And though most of their points aren't completely incorrect, they seem to manipulate the words to sound as though there's no good government regulation. And to quote from them, while many regulations are supposed to help people, such as by protecting the environment or people's health, they can have the opposite effect. And maybe I'm just crazy, and I am a little crazy, but why did they have to say supposed to? Not to say that the FDA is a perfect organization by any means, but I am sure glad that I can buy food at the grocery store and be certain that the company didn't put anthrax in my food. And if you're worried about what's in your food, the companies, they're required to list out the ingredients when they sell you things. And that's just one example of some things the magazine could include that maybe tone down the brainwashing a little bit. If you're interested in some other ways government regulations aren't all bad, check out the Chicago Booth article I'll leave in the description. It has some really interesting information on the housing crisis, 2008 recession, and things like that. Moving to the next page, we have a super hip and cool section about investing. To be honest, I really don't have that big of a problem with this section, and they give a pretty good overview of how investments work. However, they do leave out a few things that I just wanted to address here in my my drunken rant here. For a company to be able to sell shares, it must first apply and become a corporation. As nice as it is to be able to expand and collect investment funds, it does come with its downsides. Business owners lose the power to run their businesses solely, how they see fit, because now they have to answer to shareholders. If a business is acting in the interest of the shareholders and not the consumers, then that would not be very good for any of us who are the consumers. And yet again, we get another watered-down version of how the stock market works, which paints capitalism as the glorious system that never has any flaws ever. And I understand that this is for kids, but I don't think kids are stupid. I don't think that you have to lie to them by omitting the truth. You can simplify concepts to make it easier for them to understand without just leaving out parts and leaving out criticism. And that brings us to the next page here, which is on taxes. And I know taxes is everybody's favorite conversation to have. Kit's Guide makes a couple of genuinely good points in this section. The more people have to spend, the better the economy does. And I agree with this. There's really not much to say, and they even give us a little helpful flow chart so that we can understand how it all works. And alas, if only we lived in a world that was as simple as the ice cream business flow chart. My biggest issue with the whole section is this line right here. Lower taxes benefit everyone, rich and poor. And though they don't explicitly say anything about trickle-down economics, I am going to link a nifty video down below about trickle-down economics. And that's the idea that wealthy people and large businesses will use the money that they would be paying in taxes to invest it into the economy and their businesses, which really is just proven to not be true. If the government needs money to pay its employees and function, who do you think should pay those taxes? If corporations are the ones getting the lower taxes, and it not only hurts us as consumers, but it also hurts the economy as a whole. And it's just been shown, and as the video states, it just doesn't work that way. There's nothing guaranteeing that corporations will put those funds that they save on taxes back into their companies and therefore into the economy. And I might have been reading a little bit too heavily into that one, but I don't think it's too much of a stretch of the imagination to think that a magazine dedicated to capitalism would support trickle-down theory. So I just wanted to address that one there as well, mainly just for my own sanity. um, that brings me to the next and the hardest page to talk about, and that is the Socialism/Communism page. The reason I would say it's one of the harder ones to talk about is kind of the lack of nuance it gives to the term socialism. And again, I realize this is a kids magazine, but just paints it in kind of a gross light, you know? I did want to point out this little detail here, saying that there's always poverty under socialism, as if there's not poverty under capitalism. I just thought that was funny. Um, One can point out, or one cannot point out, I should say, a perfect example of socialism, because the definition varies from person to person, and there are many ways to define it. Even countries with more socialistic government policies aren't usually completely socialist. And although more socialistic policy isn't always a bad thing, though, Canada has socialized medicine, and though its citizens get more money deducted in taxes, they do enjoy a lower cost of living than here in the United States, as well as not having to spend as much money on medical expenses. Sweden, as another example, is a nation with a large percentage of socialistic policies, and in 2016 it was shown in a poll that the majority of the Swedish people are very satisfied with most of the services that the government provides for them. As I stated in the beginning of this video, this isn't an argument for socialism, but it is an argument against capitalism being the shining beacon of light in a dark world. No system is perfect, of course, but I believe that there is a hidden agenda behind this magazine, and I just don't think it's portraying socialism fairly. Portraying it as being inferior to capitalism in every way, just I don't think is the truth. As a side note, I just wanted to point out even the page that the socialism page they have it on. Every other page has bright and vibrant colors, and this page is black and shows a picture of an old decrepit car. So even just like even if it's being shown to a kid that can't even understand the nuance of the arguments, it's just the way they present it just seems a little bit shady. I can't. You're going to see the word socialism and always associate it with this dark page saying that it's bad, it's bad, it's bad. And I just don't think that that's right. Kind of to finish it all off here, I wanted to end on this last page and with one of the quotes from this page. It states here, "Thanks to the free market, we live in the most prosperous time in history." And reading this article here from the Pew Research Center, I would disagree. It does state that though extreme poverty is declining, income equality is reaching new highs. And I just want to ask you this. If we live in the most prosperous time in history right now under capitalism, why are less and less people reaping those benefits? And maybe this whole video is just me getting mad at a children's magazine, and yes, maybe I am slowly becoming more and more unhinged by the day, but I really do think that this is important. Feeding political propaganda to children isn't the way to better ourselves and a society, and as human beings in general. Tricking the future generation into blindly following a system that deserves criticism only makes them complicit with the structures that may eventually crash down on them. And that's all I got. You can like this video, subscribe to this channel. This is my first video I've ever made, so thank you for sticking through. I'm not the best at video editing or anything. But yeah, definitely, leave a comment of what you think. I'd like to keep the comment section as civil as possible. If you want to have a discussion, please feel free to do that. But, I want to not divulge into name calling as much as they might say. But yeah, tell me what you think, and you guys have a great day.